Hi, my name is Maggie and I'll be your affirmative speaker for today. Thank you so much for taking your time to judge us.
Hello, my name is Anne Brown and I'll be the negative speaker today. Once again, thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to judge us here at this building in DeSoto.
Can the negative confirm that this is 6 minutes?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and if you're ready, and the judge. Okay, good. I'll go ahead and get started. Quote, in a time when the world is virtually at a standstill and numerous citizens are suffering, just trying to survive day to day, questions regarding the importance of cultural preservation have been proffered. The same question was asked by a select group of men and women during the Second World War, whose main objective was to safeguard culturally significant works of art from destruction, end quote, writes the National World War II Museum. This group, the Monuments Men, was a nonprofit organization of 345 men and women who knew that preserving the cultures throughout Europe was important. They saw a problem and decided to risk their lives for it. No one forced them. They chose the path to protect culture through art. It is because I believe the Monuments Men fought for worthy causes that I agree with the resolution. Resolved. Rescuing great cultural and artistic achievements from theft or destruction is worth risking one's life. First, let's look at some definitions. Resolutional analysis 1. Definitions. Definition 1. Achievements, defined by Oxford Learner's Dictionary. Quote, a thing that somebody has done successfully, especially using their own effort and skill, end quote. Definition 2. Worth. The Britannica Dictionary defines as, quote, good, valuable, or important enough for something, deserving of something, end quote. Definition 3, one's own risk, defined by Merriam-Webster. Quote, with full understanding that what one is doing is dangerous and that one is responsible for one's own safety, end quote. Definition 4, culture, which Oxford Dictionary of Philosophy defines as, quote, the way of life of a people, including their attitudes, beliefs, values, arts, sciences, modes of perception, and habits of thought and activity, end quote. Now, let's jump into resolutional analysis 2, value. My value for this debate is cultural preservation. Again, that is cultural preservation. Cultural preservation is essential to every country because a culture is the foundation of each country. It is the standard of a country's beliefs, behavior, values, activity, etc. If no one preserved their culture, their stories, their beliefs, then every country would be the same. There would be no red, white, and blue American flag. Africa's vibrant colors would become monotone because no one would care. Structures in France like the Eiffel Tower, Arc de Triomphe, and Notre Dame wouldn't be so iconic. The islands throughout the world wouldn't be as differing and exciting. Without culture, the world would blend into a place of depression and sameness. Resolutional analysis 3, contentions. Contention 1, preserving our cultures is important for diversity among countries. When we preserve our cultures, we preserve the achievements made, the way of living for that culture, and the belief system. And so if each country has different ways of living, then there's diversity among those countries. An example of this is languages in countries. America's official language is English, whereas Canada's is French. In Africa, there are countries that speak English, French, Portuguese, Arabic, and Swahili. Diversity among countries should be valued because it brings variety to life. It can expand our knowledge and can change our way of thinking. Knowing about countries and their lifestyle can change our lifestyles for the better. Contention 2, diversity among cultures drives creativity and innovation. Knowing more and more differing cultures can help expand our idea making. With a new way of thinking, we try to innovate more and fix problems that arise. Thus, knowing about the diversity in countries, America can utilize it and innovate. Innovation in the US is important for the economy. making things better and less expensive for the American people and allowing for more room to change. Contention 3. Therefore, preserving our cultures is important for driving creativity and innovation. Because preserving culture leads to diversity among countries, and that drives creativity and innovation, preserving culture helps drive creativity and innovation. The monuments men did not risk their lives for feudal things, but for not only European culture, but Jewish culture. The 345 men and women volunteered their lives to save others' art and protect it, to protect their culture. The monuments men's stories show that art and culture are things worth risking our lives for. At the end of the day, culture preservation should be voted for because it is not only the foundation of how people live, but also produces effective ways for people to live. Thank you, and I now stand ready for any questions the negative might have.
Alright, would you read that as 4 minutes? Or confirm, excuse me, 3 minutes?
Yeah, that's
Alright, and if the judge is ready, then I'll go ahead and get started. Hey Maggie, how are you doing today?
hanging in there.
Alright, getting right in there. Would you agree that the resolution of today's debate round is a universal statement?
Could you define universal statement?
Yeah, for sure. So an example would be like, dogs are great animals, and then a particular statement would be, some dogs are great animals. Seeing as the resolution states that it is worth risking one's life.
Yeah, I think I can agree.
You agree with that? Alright, great.
If I understand it
Yeah,
correctly.
yeah, for sure. Alright, and then moving on, would you mind repeating your third contention? I didn't quite get it down.
Yeah, it's the conclusion, essentially, for the other two contentions. It's preserving our cultures is important for driving creativity and innovation.
Alright, thank you very much. Alright, and then would you agree that culture is a thing that changes with time?
I think it can change, yes. Some cultures have changed for the better and for the worse, but there is like the foundational culture of each country. Like for America, the documents like the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution are kind of the building blocks for our culture.
Alright.
It has
Thank
kind
you.
of,
But would you agree that culture from 100 years ago in America, or culture from a long time ago in America, is different from culture today?
unfortunately, it has changed, and so we should preserve the culture that it once was, and not
Okay.
how things might seem today.
Thank you. I have no further questions. The negative team will be starting prep time at 3 minutes. Alright, stopping prep time at 2 minutes and 6 seconds. Alright, would you confirm that this is 7 minutes on the clock?
Yep.
Alright, and if you're ready,
Yes.
and the judge, I'll go ahead and get us started. Quote, smallpox is a serious and often deadly viral infection. It's contagious, meaning it spreads from person to person and can cause permanent scarring. Flat red spots appear on the body. They may start in the mouth and on the tongue and then spread to the skin. The face, arms, and legs are often affected first, followed by the torso, hands, and feet. Within a day or two, many of the spots turn into small blisters filled with clear fluid, end quote. I'll go ahead and stop right there, but the gruesome description of smallpox continues. Smallpox is estimated to have claimed the lives of over 2 million people. But thankfully, the deadly virus was eradicated because of Edward Jenner, who developed a vaccine for it in 1796. The point I'm getting at today is that without Edward Jenner, millions of people would have been and would continue to be added to the list of smallpox-related deaths. If Edward Jenner had died before he could have developed this vaccine, we might still be suffering from smallpox today. Good morning, my name is Anne Brown and I stand against the resolution, rescuing great cultural and artistic achievements from theft or destruction is worth risking one's life. Moving on to definitions, I accept the definition of worth from the affirmative side, but I define the following terms. Definition 1, cultural achievement. Something done successfully by a particular group of people at a particular time, end quote. And this is a combination of two different definitions. Since a cultural achievement includes art, I'll be referring to the idea of art within the phrase cultural achievement. And I would also like to note that the affirmative side has agreed that culture changes over time. Definition 2, risking one's life. Once again, that is risking one's life. This is from Merriam-Webster, quote, to do something very dangerous that could result in one's death, end quote. Since life is so precious, risking one's life is to put the most valuable thing that they have in extreme danger. Now that we have those out of the way, let's move on to my value for the round. The affirmative's value was cultural preservation, but I propose that human life is a higher value, seeing as we are uniquely created in the image of God. Additionally, you as the judge should decide who wins today's debate round based on which side upholds the goal of individual human life the best. And this brings me to my contentions. Contention 1, human life is the foundation of cultural preservation. Once again, that's human life is the foundation of cultural preservation. This is quite simple. If you are no longer alive, cultural preservation doesn't matter since you can't experience it. It's as simple as that. Contention 2, you can tag as universal. Once again, that's universal. There are two kinds of statements, universal and particular statements, and as my opponent agreed in cross-ex, the resolution of today's debate round is a universal statement. Rescuing cultural and artistic achievements is worth risking one's life. This resolution does not specify that only sometimes it's worth risking one's life. Because of this, the affirmative has the burden to prove that it is always worth risking one's life for cultural achievements. To be clear, the affirmative must prove that every individual person, regardless of who they are, what they do, or what impact they have, should risk their own life for cultural achievements, and that it is always beneficial. Now, what do I mean by that? I'm sure the affirmative would agree that life is most important to us. And what this means is that the affirmative must prove that every individual person would save more lives by risking their own life for cultural achievements than by not risking their own life. An example of someone who would have saved more lives by not risking his own life for cultural achievements would be Edward Jenner. If he had risked his own life and been killed to rescue a cultural achievement before he could have invented the vaccine for smallpox, we might even today be dealing with smallpox. Now let's go ahead and move on to responding to the affirmative case. My opponent made the contention that the preservation of culture, that we must, the preservation of culture is important to keep creativity and imagination, I believe was another word that she used. But you can tag my response as life. Once again, that's life. As I earlier conveyed in my first contention, without life, there will be no cultural preservation. There will be no creativity. There will be no imagination because there will be no one to experience those things on Earth. For all these reasons, I urge a negative ballot at the end of the day. Thank you. I now stand ready for cross-examination.
Can you confirm there's 3 minutes on the clock?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and if you're ready?
Yep.
And the judge? Okay. I'm gonna go ahead and jump right in. Thank you for your speech. I just have some questions. Have you ever wanted to go skydiving, bungee jumping, or even wanted to ride in a race car?
I mean, I assume at some point in my life I have thought that would be fun.
Can you agree that there's a risk involved with that?
Sometimes.
What do you mean by sometimes?
Well, most of these things you're talking about, bungee jumping and racing cars and whatever else you listed, there are safety precautions to ensure.
Okay, so you could die, but
It's highly unlikely.
highly unlikely. Okay, thank you.
Which is not the same thing as risking your life.
I'm sorry, could you explain that? What do you mean by
I just mean that I'm not risking my life by desiring to go bungee jumping.
But you're risking your life by bungee jumping.
No, you're not.
The
risking
cord
your
could
life.
snap.
That's not the same thing as intentionally, knowingly risking your life to save something.
Okay, we can discuss this further. You talked about how human life, it was your first contention, human life is the foundation of cultural preservation. Could you explain the logic behind that argument?
Yeah, I just mean if every individual person risks their own life, then we no longer have people, therefore we no longer have culture. It doesn't even matter.
Okay, but could you also agree that it's a choice whether the person can risk their life or not? And we're debating on, like, let me clarify that, sorry. Could you agree that it's, if every, sorry, so you're saying that people should, I'm just trying to understand this better. People should not risk their lives because then there would be no culture.
I'm not saying that exactly, but I'm saying that by risking your life for something such as a cultural achievement, if everyone does this, then there's no longer culture, there's no longer humanity.
Can we agree that that's not what the resolution is talking about? Like everyone has to risk their life?
Well, the resolution says that one's life, which refers to
It's a
every
single person.
Yeah, every single individual person, not at the same
No,
time.
it's your own life.
No, it doesn't say your own
It
life.
says
one's life, which
one's-
does not refer to you individually.
I would like to hear some more explanation on how that is in a later speech. No further questions, thank you. Starting prep time at 3 minutes. No further prep time. Oops. No further prep time needed with 1 minute and 44 seconds. Okay, I have 4 minutes on the clock. If you can confirm. And if you're ready? Okay, and the judge, I'm gonna go ahead and get started. So throughout this first affirmative rebuttal. I'm just going to be going down the flow of the negatives last speech and some of the cross-ex questions that were brought up. So she first brought up a quote about smallpox, and she was talking about, like, what if the person who had found the cure for smallpox had died by trying to preserve our culture. And you can tag my response as what ifs. This argument is fully based on what if. What if this had happened? And that's not logic. That's just supposing something would have happened. And she needs to bring up further explanation and evidence regarding this point. And then my response to both of her contentions, you can tag as your own life. The resolution says, quote, worth risking one's life, end quote. One's life. I defined risking one's own life as my definition 3. It's by Merriam-Webster, and it says, quote, with full understanding that what one is doing is dangerous and that one is responsible for one's own safety. This is about yourself. This is not about the individual people around you. You read this quote as if it's yourself. And so the argument made regarding that those two arguments should be dismissed because they're based on the fact of others' lives, not your own. Okay, and then I talked about skydiving and bungee jumping and riding fast cars. I just want to explain this argument a little bit. You can tag it as entertainment. People risk their lives for things like skydiving just because it's fun. But there is a risk involved with it. People risk their lives for entertainment every day because they think it's fun. And so, shouldn't we be risking our lives for something more? Something that is important, like preserving our foundation of America, preserving culture, things that are important, whereas things that are just for entertainment. And so, for these reasons, you should vote affirmative at the end of the day because we need to preserve our culture. Thank you, and I now stand, there's no cross-examination. Thank you.
The negative will be starting prep time at 2 minutes and 6 seconds. If we can confirm?
Yes.
This is 6 minutes. All right, and if the judge is ready, and my opponent, all right, then I'll go ahead and start. I'm gonna go ahead and jump straight into today's debate round. First off, my opponent made the contention that my example about smallpox is just a what if and therefore shouldn't be worth any thinking about. However, you can tag my response as simply example. Once again, that's example. My example about Edward Jenner and smallpox is simply an example about what could have happened and what will potentially continue to happen in the future if every single person is considering risking their own life. The ultimate example of one person who saved countless lives would be Christ. He saved countless lives, and if he had risked his life for something else, which is unthinkable since he saved so many lives, that's not worth it. More examples of people in the past would be Jonas Salk, who developed the vaccine for polio, and Andrew Yersin, who discovered the cure for the Black Plague, which is estimated to have taken about 200 million lives from this. And without Yersin's cure, we would still be dealing with that today. Secondly, my opponent made the contention that we risk our lives for entertainment, therefore we should risk our lives for cultural achievements, and you can tag my response as not topical. We are not talking about entertainment in today's debate round. We are talking about whether or not it is worth people risking their own lives for cultural achievements. That is completely not topical. Next, my opponent, in her very first speech, was speaking about how we need to preserve culture to preserve diversity among countries. And you can tag this as intrinsically valuable. Once again, that's intrinsically valuable. Individual human life is more important than the idea of culture. Because without individual human lives, we would not have culture. Humans have intrinsic value, meaning they are valuable and do not need something else to make them valuable, whereas culture does need that. It needs life. Let's go ahead and move into the voting issues of today's debate round. The first one you can tag as universal. Once again, that's universal. My opponent has been talking about how the resolution is about your own life, not other people's individual lives, and this is simply not the case. The resolution says it is worth risking one's life. It does not say it is worth risking your own life. Those are two very different things, and if it did say that, then that's what it would mean that's what it would mean, but that's not what it says. One's life refers to any and all individuals. And the affirmative, because of that, has the burden to prove that every individual person should risk their own life for cultural achievements and that it is always beneficial. And I have proven to you that this is simply not the case. It is more likely that someone would more greatly impact the future by not risking his life than by risking it. My second voting issues you can tag as one's life. Once again, you're risking, this is not risking just your own life. This is many people choosing to risk their own individual lives. Now, just to be clear, you are not choosing other people to risk their own lives. You're not choosing life as a whole to be risked. Individual people would be choosing this. Alexander Fleming, this is another example of someone who created something so important, was the man who created the antibiotic penicillin, which is used to cure countless illnesses: scarlet fever, pneumonia, strep throat, blood poisoning, and I bet you can see where I'm going with this. Without Alexander Fleming, millions, if not billions, of more people's lives would have been and would continue to be claimed by these diseases and viruses. The affirmative must prove, and is not able to prove, that it is worth the life of every individual to save cultural achievements. If we've had wonderful discoveries like Alexander Fleming discovering penicillin and the man who discovered the vaccine for smallpox, We can be sure that there will continue to be jaw-dropping discoveries about illnesses and such in the future. So I urge you to vote negative to save the future lives of many. Thank you. It's been a pleasure speaking for you.
The affirmative team will be taking the rest of their prep time, starting at 1 minute and 44 seconds. You can confirm. Okay. Starting now.
I have 3 minutes for the speech, if you can confirm, and if you're ready. And the judge. Okay, let's go ahead and get started. Let's go back to my first speech. To the first quote, I talked about the monuments men. People, 345 men and women who volunteered to try and save culture, to preserve it. They saw a worthy cause and fought for it. It was their own it was each person's own individual choice to do this. Throughout this speech, I'm going to be talking about, or just refuting the negative's arguments and bringing up some voting issues. Let's jump right in to her examples that she brought up regarding the different people who, if they had tried to preserve culture, then they wouldn't have found cures and different things. And you can tag my response to all of these examples and arguments that she has brought up as risk, not death. Risk, not death. That's kind of a strange tagline, but let me explain. The negative is saying that if these people had saved culture, tried to save art, then they would have died. That's what their argument is based off of. And it is not valid because we're talking about risking life. Risking life, not dying. There is not, they can survive from this, from culture. The monuments men did. There's living proof of that. And so those examples should be disregarded. And then she talked about how my argument, or actually, my response to all her voting issues you can tag as no proof. She talks about how one's own life, meaning many individuals. She did not bring up any definitions, and one is singular. It is one's own, or one's life. One is singular. It's not multiple people's lives, it's one. And so those arguments should be disregarded at the end of the day. And then her response to my argument about the entertainment, you can tag this as what we should risk our lives for. what we should risk our lives for. That argument was just about how there are better things to risk our lives for than things of entertainment. Now jumping into my voting issues, voting issue number 1, cultural preservation helps change our way of thinking. And I proved this throughout my contentions. And then number 2, cultural preservation is important for vibrancy in life. And then number 3, cultural preservation drives innovation and creativity. And this is so important because our world is desperately in need of new ways of thinking and new imagination. Thank you, and it's been a pleasure speaking.